Alright, so hey everyone, today we'll be going over Windows file permissions and group properties. So first let's start off with finding files on your device. So if you were here for the Windows Review Practice lecture, I briefly went over this, but I wanted to include it in today's lecture as well so that you guys will really remember it. One of the most common things you do in the Cyber Patriot competition is looking for media files and deleting them. So these files come in all types of forms, such as MP3s, MP4s, PNGs, JPGs, you name it. So here are two ways that I suggest searching for files and their paths. The first way is pretty standard, which is using the File Explorer. Choose whichever directory you want to look at, preferably something that encompasses a lot of subdirectories. If you go into the View tab and navigate up to the Show and Hide bar, you can see the information, or you can see a bunch of checkboxes. I like to check all of the boxes to know as much information about the files as possible, but at the very least, you should be checking the hidden files. Sometimes there are hidden files on your laptop, meaning that if you do a regular search, they won't show up. So hidden files are often used to prevent important data from accidentally being deleted. Okay, so now that we have all our settings in place, the next step is go to the search bar and type in your file name or file extension with asterisk, and it'll populate with all the files matching your search criteria. Another way you can look for files is using the command prompt. You can cd to whatever directory you want and type in the command dir/s/b and then follow it up with either your file name or file extension. This command lists out the full file path for any files matching your given criteria. One pretty nice thing about this command is that if there's too much output or we want to see everything in a nice clean file, we can redirect all the output to a new file. So you can do this by adding a greater than sign and following that up with the name of the file you want to output everything to. The output is going to be created under whichever directory you run this command on. So I'll demonstrate this on my VM. So over here, we can see in my documents folder, I have this thing called hello.txt. So let's say I knew I had a hello.txt file on my device, but I didn't know where. I'm going to go into my command prompt, run the command and see what happens. So dir/s/b, and I'm going to look for hello.txt. So as we can see, it outputted the entire file path of hello.txt, so I know it's now under my documents folder, and that's the name of the file. So now I added another txt file. Let's say I added another txt file on this device, but I didn't know where I put it. So my main directory is my admin directory, which encompasses a good amount of folders, and I'm going to run the same command, except use a general txt search. So here we can see that it listed out every single txt folder there is under the administrator folder. So the specific file I was looking for was findthisfile.txt. But as we can see, this got a little cluttered because there was so much output. So the nice thing I was talking about was redirecting everything to a new file. So what I'm going to do is run the same command one last time and redirect it to a file called, let's say, hello output.txt. Nice, so that ran, and it's going to be stored under C users admin. So let's redirect to that folder. I don't know where it is actually. Let me search for it. So hello output.txt. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I did that. But if I go into my local disk, users, admin, we can see that the file is right here, and it has everything that the command prompt had, but just in a nice organized folder. So one nice thing about adding it to a file is that you can use like regex or whatever to filter out whatever like built-in packages or built-in files you have and narrow it down to looking for specific files that you want to delete or specific media files. So now that we have that out of the way, let's look into recovering lost files. Sometimes you might accidentally delete an important file and you need to get it back. Depending on how recently you deleted the file, you can always use the Ctrl-Z command, and you can also check your recycle bin for the folder if you didn't permanently delete it. But if this doesn't work, we have some other options. I've linked a couple options on the PowerPoint here. One option is to use the Windows File Recovery, which includes downloading an app on your Windows machine and then following the given instructions on the website. So this method essentially creates a recovery folder on your laptop. If you want to use another method that doesn't include downloading any other software, you can use your command prompt. So here are the first two commands that you need to run in order to complete the recovery process, which are listed under without third-party software in the first two bullet points. So this process isn't really fast, so you have to be mindful of that if you choose to run this particular option. Another way for looking for a file is to turn on your file history on File Explorer, and then if you right-click on a file or a folder, there's going to be this restore button, and then it'll list all the previous files that might have been in the folder, and you can search through that to get whatever file or folder you might have deleted. So there are numerous options to recover files, so don't worry if you accidentally delete anything. The methods on the screen are a few of many, so if you mess up while using these or they don't work for some reason, a simple Google search will provide you with many options as well. So now that we know a little bit more about finding files, let's take a deeper look into file permissions. Most files get permissions from their parent directories, with the root directory being the overarching place. All files and file permissions follow a hierarchical, I can't speak, but a specific order. Let's just go with that. Usually, for each file and folder, there are at least 3 basic permission types: system, admin, and whatever user account you're currently logged into. If a permission is grayed out and you aren't able to edit it, that usually means that the permission is inherited. So now let's look into permission types for these types of files. There are 6 main permission types that fall under the categories of read, write, read and execute, list folder contents, modify, and full control. The permissions for folders and files are generally the same, but as the name suggests, folder permissions regulate the permissions for folders, and file permissions modify those permissions related to files. So these permissions are pretty intuitive, but I'll still go over them briefly. So to start out, read allows you to list and view files and folder. Write is what actually lets you add and remove documents from your specific file or subfolder. And then read and write is kind of a combination of both permissions, so it lets you view as well as write. List folder contents is specific to only folders because it allows you to see and execute all the files in a given folder. Modify allows you to read, write, and delete folders. And lastly, we have full control, which lets you basically do anything you want to modify the folders or files. So in order to see what permissions each file or folder has, you can right-click on a given file or folder, click Properties, and navigate to the Security tab. Here we can see our directory, the allowed groups and users, and the given permissions for each of these groups and users. To get to more information, we can click the Advanced button at the bottom. This will pop up a new window where we will click on the Share tab. Here we can once again see all the users and groups and their respective permissions. Under Access, we can see that everyone has full control, meaning that they have no restrictions on the file or folder and can make any modifications that they want to. Sometimes we'll want to modify these permissions, but we might not have access to them, or they might be grayed out. To fix this problem, we need to get ownership access to this file or directory. To do this, we'll right-click on our location, click Properties, Security, Advanced, and then find where it says Owner. This is what we're going to change. So I'm going to demonstrate this really quickly. So I'm going to navigate to the location I mentioned earlier. So Properties, Security, Advanced. Okay, so let me go to a specific file. Let's use this. So I go to Properties, Security, and then Advanced. And then here we have the owner. So right now, it says I'm administrator, but usually if you're not the owner of the file, it'll be some kind of random user. But I'll show you how you can modify this. So I'm going to click on Change. And then this is where you can change the owner. So let's pretend I was an administrator, but I wanted to make the owner administrator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in administrator, and then I'm going to click check names. So as you can see, it updated to the full object name. And then if we click OK, it's going to save the owner to be admin. But let's say I wanted to change the permissions to another user account. So I have an account on this VM that I created in a previous lecture called Windows Lover. So let's say I wanted to give access to that account. So if I type in Windows Lover, and then I click check names, you can see this directory or this object name updated to the full length as well. And then if I click OK, we can see that the owner changed as well. So now that we have ownership of the file, we can add and remove permissions as we like. But sometimes we still might have some grayed out information, as gaining ownership of a file doesn't necessarily change the fact that permissions are being inherited from a parent directory. In order to fix this, we'll go back to our Security tab and click Advanced Settings. At the bottom, there's this button called Disable Inheritance. A pop-up will follow asking us if we want to convert our permissions or remove them. Convert essentially means that we're adding permissions, and remove means that we're removing them. Go ahead and choose whichever one you want depending on your specific situation, and once you finish this process, you'll see that nothing else will be grayed out anymore. All right, so now we have proper ownership and inheritance settings that will actually allow us to add and remove permissions if we were unable to do so before. Even if you were able to add permissions before these steps, you probably would have gotten an error notification when removing permissions. So these steps allow you to really work around those issues. Now this part is fairly straightforward. Under the Security tab, we can see that there are options to add and remove permissions. You can click on either one of those buttons and proceed to add or remove the groups and users, and there you have it. So adding groups and users is essentially the same as changing the owner as I did before. So you'll have the little box where you can type in administrator or a specific user, and then you can click check names and OK. It'll update to add your specific group or user. So let's move on to the last topic of the day, group properties. To start off, here are two ways to access groups. Firstly, you can go to Control Panel and search for Administrative Tools. From there, you can click on Computer Management, which will take you to the groups. Or you can simply search for Computer Management in your search bar. Another way to bring up this window is by using the Windows R shortcut and typing in the MSC command, which is compmgmt.msc. This will bring you to the same location. So once you have your computer management open, if you click on System Tools, navigate to Local Users and Groups, and finally the Groups tab, you can see that this lists out all the groups and their descriptions. So here we can see all the names and all the descriptions of what each group is. To get more information about these properties and permissions for each group, what we're going to do is click on a group, go to the menu, and click Action, which is up here at the top, and then we'll click Properties. This will bring up a window called User Properties. And then we can see all the members that are assigned to each group, and we can get a little bit more information about what the description is. Like we can see the entire thing, when previously we just saw a select, like the beginning of a description. So at the bottom, like for file permissions, we have the Add and Remove buttons that let us modify which members are allowed to access a certain group. And yeah, so basically, computer management is where you can get all the specific information about groups, who's in each group, descriptions, and so on. So if you ever see anything sketchy here, you probably want to take a look at it, maybe remove unauthorized users, and so on. And as we can see, there's also local users here as well, which follows a similar pattern, so you can look through that as well. So that concludes today's lecture. It was a little bit shorter than I thought it would be, so I can answer any questions that you guys might have. So feel free to ask me.